Hello and welcome to Identirati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 141. Quick reminder, please follow the live stream on LinkedIn. It really helps support the live stream. Our two guests today from the WSO2 Identity Group are Thelina Senaroth, Senior Engineer, and Ayesha Desanayaka, Associate Director and Architect. Sorry about butchering your names, but welcome, guys.
Nice to be in your session, live streaming, Mike. So we were looking forward for this session.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for the opportunity, actually.
So before we dive into the topic today, maybe you guys could do a quick round of introductions. Ayesha, you're alphabetically first, so starting with you.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us, Mike. My name is Ayesha Disanaika, and I'm based in Sri Lanka. And I've been with WSO2 for more than 11 years now. I just started my career at WSO2 in 2014, just after my graduation, and joined as a software engineer, and then worked my way through and up around 2022, 23. I was the product owner for Asgardia, which is a SaaS identity product for WSO2. And then I was on maternity leave in late 2024. And then when I come back, the world has completely changed and AI has taken over everything. And the industry that I came back was completely different from where I stopped for my leave. And then right after my leaves, I started working on identity and access management for agents and controlling these agents' access to business resources and so on. I work with Tilina and the team to define a solution within the WSO2 for that.
Awesome. And Helena, you might not have as long of a background, but how do you find yourself at WSO2?
Yeah, so hi, my name is Thelina Senaroth. I'm a senior software engineer at WSO2. I joined the WSO2 around 2022. And first 2 years, I work in API and access management team in identity and access management. And then I joined in in February, I think, to 2025, Ayesha about tackling the problem of AI agent identity and access management. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
That's how I.
So the topic today is OBO, and I guess that's on behalf of OAuth, encoding delegation with JWTs. And I got interested in this topic because I saw an IETF draft, which is a very early version. It's not a standard. It's just like, okay, here's an idea. But this is a really cutting edge area. So I thought the draft was really interesting, and I said I got to get these two engineers on the line and talk about it. So that's what brought us together. And so I don't know, Ayesha or Thelina, maybe one of you could give us an overview. Should we put Thelina on the spot? Because Thelina, you think you could do that for us? Give us an overview of the spec?
Yeah, sure.
The draft, I should say. Draft spec.
Yeah, draft spec. So we, when we first start the tackle this AI agent problem, the security problem, we thought like the current use case of the AI agents are more coupled with the humans. Like we are calling that human in the loop. So we thought about like so we need to give a way, like propose a way to delegate the authority, delegate the access control to this AI agent. So we thought like then we need to have some protocol. We can use the current standard protocols, but these AI agents are, they are they have these dynamic behaviors, complex interactions, and they have their own autonomous decision making. So we have to think about these behaviors and interaction from different perspective. Like we can't actually match these we can't see these AI agent exactly like traditional software. So we thought these agents are different. So that's why we came up with the this draft. So I think Aisha can give a brief introduction of these. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question for Ayesha, which is, this sort of looks like a code flow, a version of a code flow. Is that right? And maybe you could say what's different, or how does this compare to a normal OpenID Connect code flow?
Yeah, Mike. So this is an extension on top of authorization code grant flow. So that's why we call it in the name as well. So as Tilly mentioned, so so we see that today most of the agents are supposed to work on behalf of users, and it makes sense that these agents need authorization delegated from users. For example, let's say I ask my agent plan my vacation, so then that agent would want access to my emails. That agent would
Terrifying, but go on.
yeah, that agent might want my access to my calendar, or maybe it can go to extremes like going to booking.com and making a booking in a like hypothetical scenario. But all of these actions should actually be made on behalf of me. So that's where we were focusing on. And then we looked at how we delegate my permission selectively to these agents. So I can't give my credential definitely. Then I can't assign all my permissions to these agents. Then we wanted to selectively assign permissions to these agents for the task they want to do. And then again, we shouldn't be overpopulating these agents with the permission. So those has to be more dynamic. So agents decide which tools to be used, which actions to be made at the runtime. So at the runtime, now the agents wants to get the authorization and consent from the user. So that's where we thought, like for example, uh, how we get this dynamic consent and dynamic authorization. Consent is again important because like agents has to act upon users consent. So then we looked at what are the existing IAM construct that we can look at and how we can extend them, so that we don't interrupt whole application development ecosystem or the business ecosystem and work with the existing infrastructure. That's when we thought of like we need something to dynamically grant consent and authorization for this agent as they want and as they execute more and more functions, so that uh, at the beginning they will only ask for one permission, and then as they go on they can ask for more permission. So uh, but if we take a traditional application, most of the time we at the login time we give we kind of delegate the permission that required for that application. So mostly we were thinking about this dynamic case. And so then we looked at how to extend this authorization code grant flow, because that's the standard way of getting users access delegated to and delegated authorization for other parties. And on top of that, we included two new attributes. So at the time when you make authorization code request, you given in you mention that this is the agent and this is the identifier for that agent that's trying to make that needs your permission delegated to. And then afterwards that authorization server takes that information and takes the user through the normal authorization code grant flow to complete the authentication. And if it's a already authenticated session, it will go through SSO flow and only ask for the consent. And then at the time uh, the token is issued, the request has to have the information about the agent. Sorry, request has to have uh, have a validation that this is making from that same agent. So for that, it needs to pass a token called actor token. And by combining these two, we issue a new token called OBO token, so that
Mhm.
the agent can use that token will have the permissions or the scopes that was delegated by the user, and also it will have the information about the actor who's using this token. So that claim that's coming from standard token exchange uh, spec as well. So we combine set of these other existing specifications and use develop this particular protocol and put it out as an idea for everyone.
Let me see if I can read this back to you and you agree with my
Okay.
layman's definition. So it's like a normal code flow where we're asking the user to consent or authenticate. But in this case, there's some extra information back to the user that this is an agent that's going to be authorized to do something on my behalf. And so we need to convey some information back about that agent. And the token gets back, the code, I guess, gets back to the client, and the client trades it for an access token as normal. But we have some extra context about the fact that an agent was involved here in this authentication. So am I close?
Yes, exactly. That's what's happening.
Okay. So, Thelena, actually, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned before our call started that there was some feedback from the community on this already.
Yeah.
And actually, I was going to hassle you on a bunch of things on this design, but I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said. So what's been the current feedback that you've heard?
Yeah, the first feedback we get, like most of the feedback we get from these two new parameters we introduced, like this. Now the new authorization servers need to have this implement these new parameters. They have to use these parameters in their authorization. So this might be a problem, right? So
What's the problem with that? I mean, we both have authorization servers, and I don't think adding a new parameter. I mean, we add new endpoints all the time. I don't think adding a
yeah.
problem.
So that's
Well, IDP
one.
vendors never want to do anything, you're saying, especially big SaaS ones that have millions of IDPs like Microsoft and Google. For them to add a parameter actually costs them a huge amount of money. But okay, so they don't like the new parameter, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, but you're
So
not
that
going to get new functionality without a new parameter. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So that's the first, as I mentioned, we get the first feedback for this one. The second thing is about the second feedback we get for this draft is about we use this requested actor. It's a URI actually, but the community mentioned we can use this actor token in the we can replace this actor requested actor parameter with the actual actor token.
mm-hmm.
So then we can before going to the token request in the original authorization request, we can validate this actor before the token request. Then it will be a good way to increase the security. That's the second feedback we get.
Okay, and so Ayesha, it sort of struck me as I was reading this draft that the way that OAuth drafts work is that they don't try and boil the ocean and do everything. Normally, there's a number of drafts or a number of specs working together that each define their own distinct part of a problem. So it seemed like the spec wasn't really addressing the agent identity part. Was that on purpose? And what are your thoughts about how agents would identify themselves? Would it be dynamic client registration? Would there be some new thing? So what are your thoughts on the current state of like agent identity? What identifier do we use? And also agent registration?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Mike. I was kind of I'm happy to discuss that as well. So by the time when we were publishing this draft, like there was a huge debate whether the agents need an identity. So like the community was kind of community and the customers and everybody is kind of debating whether they need an identity. Why can't they use an existing IAM construct? So which works by the way as well. That we can represent an agent as an application or like it could be a like like it could be a normal software app, or an application, but we kept that agent identity out of the scope of this particular draft on purpose, and we only said that agent need an identity. That's why we specify that actor, requested actor, and that requested actor should have a valid token that was issued to that actor. So actor being the agent. So there we didn't want to ground this agent's identity to an application or a user or a service account or something, but
So can I just
yeah,
clarify one thing? So what you're saying is that you just sort of said there'll be a token that represents the identity of the agent, and how that token gets created or registered is out of scope. But
yeah,
but
we
that's
kept
the
it.
idea, though, that there will be some type of token.
Yeah, so that's what we kept it out of the scope. But this spec, the draft itself implies that agent needs to have an identity, which is an uniquely identifiable identifier, which is denoted as the requested actor ID, and that agent should be able to obtain tokens for that agent's identity. So but how that is obtained, we kept it out of the scope of this particular specification proposal.
And what are your thoughts on how that this area is really, you've probably been looking at this. What are your thoughts about do you see any likely solution emerging there? Are there any contenders? What are your thoughts about this? How this is
Actually, we are working on a solution, and we just released some of the capabilities to WSO Asgardio, and those will be available in upcoming identity server version as well. So our take on this is that we think that agents deserve its own identity, and they deserve to be represented as first class entity in the ecosystem, not users, not applications or other borrowed identities. Rather, they should have their own identity, and they should be able to assign by
What about
different roles.
discoverability? I hear a lot of talk about like MCP servers should be able to advertise their capabilities, so that discovery isn't just about obtaining your client credentials, but also about making yourself, sort of publishing information about yourself to make your service discoverable. And are you seeing that evolving too?
Yeah, so an agent will have its own profile as well, right? So they will, if it's something supposed to be discovered through the internet, so it should have a public URL, and it should have some metadata. And so I believe those information also should be managed, and agents life cycle also need to be managed along with that identity. So so I so in our solution we have thought of that as well, and we gave the capability to maintain those attributes, and it's at very early stage, but we are working on improving and adding more and more capabilities to that. But to your question, yes, I think it's very important that agent discoverability, as agents, like agents should be able to discover the capabilities and tools that are available to them, as well as they might be able to be used discovered by other agents or other business functions as well.
Belinda, I wanted to ask you a question about the spec.
Hmm.
In the draft spec, you use the word actor
Yes.
instead of the word agent.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if there's a reason why you don't just use agent there. Is it
Yeah.
because the
So
actor is an entity that acts on behalf of a user?
yeah.
Um, so,
So we first, when we are writing the spec, we first wrote this spec using this agent, the requested agent. We use this parameter requested agent and requested agent token. Then we thought about this can be extended to another, not only for the agent, it can be used for another use cases as well. That's why we use this actor that we inspired by the token exchange specification. So that's
mhm.
why we actually use the actor instead of the agent.
Ayesha, have you looked at the transaction token draft? This has not gone final yet, but it's pretty close, I hear.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to go in detail into that. Yeah.
It's basically just a token exchange where it's a new grant type. So you do a token exchange and you get back a transaction token. It's like a type of access token. I guess the access token you get back by presenting client credentials. And this transaction token you get back doing a token exchange. But anything can go in the transaction token. There's no in the example specs, they talk about buy 100 shares of Microsoft stock at market, some basic stock trading examples. But really, the transaction token is just an envelope for whatever the heck you want to put in there, as far as I can tell. But it seems like, I wonder, there's a couple of, there's actually two pieces of software here. One piece of software is the AI agent, let's say, the actor, and the other piece of agent is the resource server that's getting the request from this thing that's not the person. So where was I going with this? I don't know. Any thoughts about why are we using an access token here? Or who's obtaining the access token? Why are we using an access token? And maybe would it be better to use a transaction token and do a token exchange rather than a re-authentication of the client? Or which client is that even authenticating?
Yeah, so we can look at it in different ways. So maybe a transaction token might also be a useful component here. So, but how does that address this dynamic consent and authorization?
Yeah. So so it's a long train, but so we have a resource server that has an API, right? And that's the client, and it gets a request from an AI agent. I want to book a meeting on Mike's calendar, and so the resource server, who is the one redirecting the user to give consent in this case? It's the AI agent was acting on the user's behalf. They called an API. That API actually says, no, I need Mike's consent. And then how does it actually flow back to the user? Felina, feel free to take this one. You see what I'm saying, though? Because the API is the resource server, right? And
yes.
AI agent.
Here, the API or the resource server detects that it doesn't have the consent or the authorization required for this request. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Like, how do we get back to the user? And then I think if we can figure that out, then I can understand whether it would be better for the client to re-authenticate or whether the client already has a token and should maybe just do a token exchange.
Yeah, so we've introduced this challenge-based mechanism. So when the resource server identifies that it doesn't have enough authorization or the consent, or it doesn't satisfy the requirements to be able to access that particular request. So in our proposal, it sends a challenge. It could be a raw as well, like detailed one. You need a new token, or you need consent, or like adding more and more information about what type of a token that the resource server is expecting. And based on that, the client can make another uh, authorized request with that particular challenge information in that challenge to obtain a new token, or step up the authorization, or get that consent. um, so
I still don't see how the client, so Google Calendar, let's just make it real world examples. So Google Calendar, I'm interacting with an AI agent in the prompt. and I say, book a meeting with Mike in my prompt. And then that agent calls, I guess, an API, Google Calendar API, right? And says, I want to, call the Calendar API and book a meeting for Mike. And then the API says, no, you're not authorized with that token. And it returns back to the AI agent. Um, um, in that case, and says, no, you're not authorized. But if you could redirect to this URL, maybe I could authorize you. Like, how do we get the user to actually invoke the browser session from the prompt?
I think Tilina, we did some of these examples.
Yeah,
So it's something similar to elicitation in MCP.
MCP.
Yeah. So
Um,
using that information, you can prompt uh, like URL or ask to click a link that's provided in the chat or the prompt itself, and then user can go through that flow. And of course we have thought of that ambient cases as well, and we see that we can adapt back channel authentication mechanisms like SIBA, so that user will get the authorization request and the authentic or the link to go through the required login and consent and authorization through a different channel.
yeah, if the client is polling for a request or can receive a push request, which is not a lot of clients, though.
Yes.
So, and Felinda, maybe you had some thoughts about just this mechanism. As it hasn't ever happened to me in real life. So, have you seen this?
Yeah. So we did some POC around this, like when the agent is the resource server challenged its agent to get an authorization from the user or a consent from the user. The agent software, I mean, not the LLM. It's not about the LLM. The agent software, the agent framework that using, they will use this kind of a WebSocket. We use WebSocket mechanism. Then use this WebSocket to publish this URL, some authorization server URL to the client side, the front end. And from the front end side, we will visualize this getting consent or some kind of approval button. Then the user click this approval button, and then we'll redirect back to the authorization server, then give the consent, then complete the authorization flow. Then the agent will get this the new access token with this consent and the new permission. Then it will be interact with the resource server. That's how, like, this is the POC level implementation we did with the WebSockets. So,
Okay, yeah, and if you want to, we can put a link to that in the episode notes if there's a public link.
yeah, sure, I will do that.
So I guess my follow-up question is, Ayesha, so let's say we go through this authorization and I authorize Google Calendar through this agent to do this thing. Are these tokens all one-offs, or can they be passed downstream? Like maybe the Google Calendar API needs to present this token. Are these, or do I have to authorize basically every API that the agent needs to call every time it does? And so I don't know. Is there any trust across these tokens?
So that depends on the use case and the user experience that you want to give as well, right? Like, if, for example, if you want to get the consent for each and every action tool call that the agent want to make, so it'll be a UX nightmare, right? And like, I won't be using that kind of agent. I have to always, like, if the agent is asking whether I should do it or not. So
I
there has
also
to be.
see it as like sort of like, okay, I tell it to go book me book a travel. Let's say, use the travel example, and maybe like I go off and I'm doing something else because that's what's good about AI. And then I don't notice that in my prompt, my AI agent, has said, click here to authenticate and authorize this backend API that I didn't even know about.
Yes.
So that's sort of what we're saying we need to do, though.
Not always. So we have to do it at some places, and then once the token is obtained, and then it has the necessary permission level and authorization, then it can be used during the lifetime of it, that token. But if the token is expired, also uh, refresh mechanisms also can be there, but that's also can be in some cases those also can be risky, because agents might go and do things that are not expected to be done, right? So we can't be like 100% safe with those actions, so we have to balance those security and experience aspect, which is always harder thing to do.
My new theory is that it's all the whole the biggest part of the challenge is authorization. Um, so even if we have all these fancy capabilities, if we can't make policies about these things that are getting increasingly esoteric and complex for normal developers, then we're not going to be able to affect these behaviors and user experiences. Um, so where do you think we are on the policy gap in terms of what it'll take for what will developers have to do? And do you also agree that we have a real challenge and need to address a challenge in sort of the authorization, especially from the application developer perspective? Like, what do they have to handle now to build an application?
Yeah, yeah, of course, the authorization and policies are very important. And also, like, now we have cases like, if we agents can go to extreme, like agents are working on behalf of multiple users, right? So one agent, for example, if there is a hiring assistant agent, that hiring assistant might be interacting with the interviewees who shouldn't have any access to the internal APIs or resources. And then there can be managers and interviewers who are doing these interviews and updating the internal system. So if that agent is helping out with these multiple users, so then it's very important that this what are the authorizations levels that each agent has, so that the agent has been, that agent is catering to each user. So I think authorization is a very critical component here. And agent application developers or the agent developers also have to attribute to these different requirements as well. And uh, so one thing I've seen that many people do is that they don't think about that and authorize everything to these agents without knowing that those might go wrong downstream, and agent may have access to tools and functions that they are not supposed to work.
Yeah, like
Uh,
letting Claude AI agent run your browser.
yes. Yeah, something like, so those things can happen. So it's very important that this defining these policies. And also there can be like, now we have the sub agents, and like agents can spawn new agents. So what are the privileges or the authorization level that should be assigned to those agents? So those kind of aspects also need to be thought. So it's very important that developers should have capabilities to define these policies, and those should also get evaluated dynamically. So because the
So in
agent's
that,
nature also changed dynamically.
I'm just wondering, it's fine to hear us senior engineers talk about this stuff. As somebody in the trenches, actually, um, what are your thoughts about authorization? When how hard is it for you as somebody who knows a little bit more? You know, you've been at WSO2 almost 4 years. How hard is it for application developers today to figure out how to do authorization in their apps?
Yeah, so the authorization is the very tricky point. The authorization, actual access control mechanism. I think I know you are most talk about this policy-based authorization, all those things. In our cases, is handling authorization even for the identity and access. Our WSO2 identity server, our own resource server, they have our own resource server as well. So managing these authorization and access controlling for this resource server is very hard. Even we have this role-based access control, policy-based, or access attribute-based access controls, but um, having these dynamic capabilities, context aware authorization is very tricky for this. Even it's, I know that this AI agent needs context aware authorization. It's very tricky. Yes, I like to have your thoughts about this policy based access control for the AI agents or any application.
So I say, like, we don't have the tokens right now to represent sort of the agent identities that we need, or the delegations that we need, and I think you guys are working on that. And we don't have the flows to obtain those tokens yet either. And then we can't make policies about the tokens in our applications. So I think that people are more concerned about how do we identify the agents, and how do we authenticate them, issue them tokens under certain flows, represent delegations. I think these are the things that people are focusing on now. But I think that even if you're assuming we had these like magical tokens that represented exactly what we want, and we can figure out which tokens we wanted to trust, which issuers we trust, most enterprises still don't have the ability to express policies, especially when it comes to like your average application developer. More than 50% of the developers are JavaScript developers. And so my thought is we just need to make this whole thing a lot easier for developers, because we have all these very like complicated ideas about how to represent these delegations and authorizations and what's required. And there's just so much stuff going on. I think we've gone past the point where we can push this off onto developers. It's one thing to say, get an access token, fine, validate the issuer, fine. But like, we can't add on like 50 things after that. And we really do need to add on a lot more in order to get security. So yeah, I see a lot of opportunities. I think we need to think about the policy part of it, because from a trust standpoint, we need to start getting a agreement among domains on what are the policies, not just how we represent the data, but we want to understand, what's your obligation to do certain things with the data. If you share it, maybe there's an obligation to inform me. And what are the restrictions? So I feel like we need to start to build trust. We need to build sort of a agreement and a way to talk about policy at the interdomain level. And the input to that is going to be the tokens that we hopefully define that show how we delegate trust, and whatever they end up being. There's a lot of tokens out there. But I don't know, Ayesha, or maybe you're not as jaded as I am because you're working in AI, but what are your thoughts on where we're at today in this journey?
Yeah, of course. Like the authorization, as you mentioned, like it's quite like after doing authentication and obtaining token, even at the point when you are issuing a token, it's very it should go through different set of these kind of policies and checks to make sure that you are issuing a token uh, with care, because so that's one of the point that those policies need to be evaluated as well. For example, lifetime of the token, so there can, and also the usage of this token, like how many times you can replay this token for. There can be tokens that are issued to agents for one time. For example, if I want to do a transaction of a higher limit, so the agent can ask my permission, but it should, once the token is like that transaction is done, it should not be usable anymore. So those
Yeah.
things also need to be taken into consideration. So at the point these agent or OBO tokens are issued, we need to be considering these different policies and enforcing them. So that's at the IDP's side. So who, like identity providers also need to have this fine grain and dynamic authorization capabilities inbuilt. And from the application developer standpoint, they also need, so their main goal is to provide the best experience securely. So then and which are at the two ends of the ends. Like to increase the security, you have to reduce. If you want like most secure system, you have to reduce the user experience.
You have
But
to add friction for your
yeah,
for adding friction is a good
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. But so then also, of course, like developers need to build that experience, as well as like they might also need to consider some of these uh, authorization levels, like when one user with higher privileges logs in, they might have more capabilities, and the tool set that the agent want to interact with at that point might be higher than a low privilege is interacting with the agent. So those are the application or the agent developer side as well. So they also, and as you mentioned, those it's important that it's easy, because now they are, as their expertise is not in that security domain, they are developers with uh, particular technology, or interacting with the tech stack for developing applications.
Yeah.
So that's also there.
Well, I think let's this has been a good conversation, and let's move to last thoughts. Helena, any last thoughts?
Yeah, so talking about the agent identity and access management, I think this field is like very frequently changed. First we get this background kind of agents, and then we get some kind of this browser-based agent. Now we have we use agents as employees in the enterprises, I think. So security for this agent is very critical. We have to sacrifice the security for user experience, and we have to sacrifice user experience for the security. So finding the balance between these two is very critical. We have to think about that as well. And one other thing is we are as a security standpoint, we are trying to address this hallucination problem in the agentic AI, because we can't actually fix the hallucination in the models, but we can prevent some the hallucination the agents are doing using these access control mechanism, different authentication and authorization mechanism. So we have to think about that as well, as a security expert working on this agentic AI.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, I've been saying something similar, which is that the productivity of AI agents to produce policy is great, but we can't use AI to check it because the AI hallucinates all the time. And so we need something deterministic to check the, let's say, predictively generated text. So yeah, I think that's a really good point. Ayesha, any last thoughts?
Yeah, so I'd like our viewers to check out our proposal, and if you have any feedback, send them across. And also, we have implementation of this protocol in WSO2 Asgardio. So if you are interested, go and check it out. And we have along with that, we have few more capabilities, like representing agents as first class entities and so on. So I'd like you to go and check it out and hear any feedbacks. And those who are building AI agents, and uh, if you are not today, most likely you will be someday. My advice is, like, think of the security aspect from the beginning. Don't make it an afterthought, because it's uh, important that you consider those aspects at the beginning before any damage is done. And with agentic AI and agents being able to access our business resource systems and resource servers, and make changes to the resources, uh, things can go wrong, and even you might not be able to correct them, or tracing back them to the agents who did those actions might also not be possible if some if a damage is done. So think of security of agents from the day one that you start building agents.
And I like that point too, because at Glue we've been talking a lot about auditability and how important it is to have what I call the cryptographic chain of custody. From the time you interacted with a human to the time the tokens were exchanged to the time that those tokens show up in the audit log. We need that for threat detection, which is where a lot of the business value is. So, okay, let me just announce the next episode. IGA, From Automation to Intelligence, with Manoj Kumar from Pax Identity, guest from London. So he's written a couple of great blog articles, and I read them and I said, I have to get this guy on. So I've never met him, but I'm looking forward to it. What else? I also wanted to mention, in line with the topic we've been talking about today, there is a new after identity, internet identity workshop. There's a new agentic AI workshop. So if you're interested in this topic, that's happening in Mountain View at the Computer History Museum right after IAW. So if 3 days of IAW wasn't enough and you need another day of IAW, that is now an option on Friday, and it's just going to be about agentic AI, of which IAW will be half about it anyway. So anyway, but it should be really, I think it's a fantastic idea and will attract a huge community. So I think it'll be quite interesting if you're out there. And yeah, I think that is it. So thank you, WSO2 Identity Gurus and Geniuses for joining us. Thank you, Ayesha. Thank you, Thelena. Thank you, audience. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.